Dear Professor Pollalis, we are happy to greet you in the frameworks of the project City as a Classroom. Thank you for being with us today. And my first question, if you don't mind, would be the following. Since you have been the director of the institute, which is responsible for sustainable infrastructure, I think, at the Harvard School for many, many years. You have been chief planner of the city Karachi, and you've been managing at least the planning of 10 cities in arabgulf, and you have even planned several bridges. Could you please share, what does it take? What kind of skills does it take to be somebody like you who is capable of doing these things?
Actually, I happen to have a very diverse background. I studied engineering, which gives a very solid background, and then business, which gives a different dimension to looking at the engineering. And I had the fortune to work in a school of architecture and planning at the beginning as an engineer. I have also studied at length about computer science and the use of computers in the design fields. So eventually I started teaching more courses in planning, in architecture, always combining the business side and the engineering side. So it has taken a very diverse background. I believe like most things in life happen by chance, as long as you take that chance and you push it a little forward. So I was very lucky to find myself in very top universities. First, I was at the top university at that time, at least in Greece. Then I was lucky enough to be admitted at MIT in Boston, and where I spent quite a long time studying all these different diverse fields. And eventually I was even luckier to be a professor at Harvard, I would say, because of my diverse background.
When you are planning a city, when you are working on it, what are the factors, the main factors that you take into account to make this city successful? I mean, what makes it livable and comfortable for people?
We have to go a little back here and say that for the last 15 years, I focus on sustainability. Again, as many things in life, things happen by chance, as long as you get the chance and you push it more forward. So starting with sustainability, there was a time that people were talking about the sustainability of buildings, but very little about the sustainability of infrastructure. So we put together a program at Harvard on the sustainability of infrastructure, and I managed to have very big and important engineering firms to actually complement the academic side. So it was a joint program between industry and the academia. At the same time, I was able to bring professors from other schools of Harvard, like public health, environment, business, law, and government. So it was a very diverse team, and eventually we developed a rating system for the sustainability of infrastructure, which did not exist at that time, and now it's being used widely in the United States and all over the world. So starting from sustainability, the next thing was to look at the cities as sustainable cities. And the question is, what makes a city sustainable? And basically, the argument that I have put together with my thesis is that the city is sustainable if it has sustainable infrastructure, if it has sustainable buildings, and the buildings are related to the infrastructure. So the buildings do not only consume the output of the infrastructure, but rather they produce as well. And what I mean is they produce energy, they produce clean water, and they do not put a lot of load on the infrastructure. And finally, the last part, and most important, is that we need a sustainable planning of the city. And the sustainable planning simply means that although people live in very big cities, in reality, we all live in a small part of the city. So we have like cities within cities, or to put it in a different way, villages within cities. And these villages have to have all the amenities at different levels. And this is where I used the theory of a very important urban planner, Konstantinos Doxiadis, who was Greek, has passed away, and who planned very important cities in different parts of the world. His masterpiece is Islamabad in Pakistan. Of course, he has worked in Dhaka, which now is Bangladesh, has worked in the United States, Philadelphia, and also in the Midwest. So his idea was that the city, again, is combines different smaller cities, and his magic number was 30,000 people. 30,000 people living in 2 by 2 kilometers. And then he was identifying different functions within these 2 by 2 kilometers. He applied it precisely like this in Islamabad. When he applied it in other cities, including Karachi, again in Pakistan, it was not implemented exactly the way he had planned it. So combining the urban theory of Doxiadis, which is called ekistics, from the Greek word ekos, which means house, but at the same time means the area that we live, and then combining sustainability and respecting the environment. This is where it leads to me on how I plan cities.
So my next question, since you have mentioned now several cities, and also one was constructed by this famous urban architect. When it comes to city mentalities, since every city is so different and every country is different, certainly, do you take into consideration a mentality of the region while designing and planning a city? And if yes, in what ways?
Well, I would use the word culture. So culture and history are extremely important. One of my largest research projects that I have been engaged and I have completed, and we're going to launch the virtual book in September this year, was the urbanization of the Arab Gulf, or what others call it Persian Gulf. And we looked at all the cities on the Arab Gulf. And we looked at 8 countries. We looked at 10 cities. And then we started analyzing actually the cities and how they had been built. You could not do that research unless you would take into consideration history, culture, and religion. So our studies are always based on that. And this is fundamental. And I say this because in those countries, it's very important to have privacy. It's very important that the family is very well protected. It is very important to know that families live together. And I'm not talking about only now, I'm talking about the past as well, because our research started from the past and continues until today and the future. So this is fundamental, very fundamental. And along these lines, I'm working with anthropologists from Harvard. My co-PI was a person who was actually a specialist in history. And this is the only way to understand how cities are being involved. By the way, let me go back to Doxiadis. when Doxiadis was planning his cities, in his team, he had specialists like anthropologists, economists, geographers, not as many as planners or architects, but at least they were always there assisting in understanding how a city should be built. So the culture and history are extremely important.
When you said history, would you mind if we go back a little bit into history and I ask a question related to that? So for many people, not for everybody, Middle Ages is considered to be something dark and people being not educated and etc. But you as an academic, maybe you did research how people approach to city building back in 16th and 15th and 17th centuries, and what is different right now? Were they that dark, I mean, or were they really talented and actually capable urbanists, if we can say so?
I always believe that people are very capable because they spend much more time in thinking about the problems they had at that time than we believe that they had thought. Let's go back to my project on the Gulf urbanism, as it's called. And I will send you a link when this is officially launched on the web. And I would like to invite you also to attend the launching ceremonies. That's going to be the end of September. But if we look at that, we notice that they were quite advanced. Technology was not as capable of doing things. Nevertheless, let's take the cities in that part of the world that they had serious social problems at that time and economic problems and problems of surviving because of the very harsh climate. So they were bringing, let's say, wood from Africa, from Zanzibar. They were making their houses with very small openings, thick walls. During the day, they were staying in the house that was very hot and humid. So definitely they knew how to do and how to survive. And I believe that their culture was also very much influenced by the weather and the environment and the social side of what was going on at that time. So definitely they had less technology, less means, but they were very innovative and they were surviving. And the key issue at that time was primarily surviving. Very harsh climate, very hot, very humid. On the contrary, I believe today we are much more comfortable. Today, simply in that part of the world, you burn gas or oil, you have powerful air conditioning, you have very modern materials to insulate, and you create an environment like if you were in Northern Europe.
Professor Pollalis, you said about this comfortability. How are we comfortable in these days? Because I mean, we have so much, sometimes even more than we need. And so I don't know if you would agree, but from psychological point, it is believed that the more resistance a person has in his life, the more struggle he has, the more agile he is and more, I mean, his psyche works even better. However, these days, most of people, we live in the cities, and especially like in the West, it's believed that some cities are just so calm. Everything is so automated. The routine is strictly, you know what will happen. You don't have like this force majeures a lot. So do you think it is good for humans, or should we have maybe a little bit more struggle as our ancestors did, just from the perspective of city as a classroom?
Well, that's a question I would not like to elaborate much because it goes beyond my expertise and my field of study. I can tell you as a person that I believe, yes, we are a little more comfortable, but not everybody. We're a very small percentage of people on the planet that we're so comfortable. Many people are still struggling, and they're struggling very much. They do not have the facilities that we consider them to be available to us all the time. And as a result, there is a very unequal distribution of resources. And one of the issues that we're going to discuss in the conference is about the footprint of the cities. So you see that some of the more developed countries, they have a footprint that exceeds not only their city, but their entire country, like in London, for example. So I would say first, not everybody is as comfortable today. Those who are comfortable, they overdo it. And when we will talk about the city as a classroom, we are going to focus on that, on the understanding of what is the footprint of the city and how we can be more responsible. Now, if we continue like this, the planet is not able to support us. So the only way to support us is that some of us were very comfortable and some others are suffering. And I say this from the pure numbers and the pure number of resources that we have. So this is not a political statement, it's just a scientific statement.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts today with us, Professor Pollalis. It was a pleasure, and hope to see you soon.
Very good. Thank you very much, Kanike. I really enjoyed it.